Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Hi, folks. Welcome back. And all those that are new, welcome. Well, it's a done deal. Just waiting for Biden's signature. The debt ceiling bill passes the Senate. Interesting mix of who voted for and against. Mostly who voted against the Republicans, a few odd Democrats. It's amazing. The only two independents are, my understanding, if I remember right, Christian Sinema, who's a new independent, and Bernie Sanders, who technically always was, even though he's really a progressive left socialist Democrat. He voted against it, but Christian Sinema voted for it. We're going to see the graph for how each senator voted. It's needed 60 votes to pass, and it won by 63 votes. Let's read a little bit of the story, then we'll see the actual roll call total. The Senate passed a bill to raise the government's borrowing limit late Thursday night, sending it to the president's desk with just days to spare before the government was set to run out of money to pay for its obligations on June 5th. Now, I already have a video out if you want to see it. The deal put together by McCarthy with I shouldn't say the Democrats, I should say the White House, whoever the president is. Maybe someday we'll find out. And the Senate had no say in it, which is very unusual. Usually the Senate has its version, then they go into committee with the two different versions and come to an agreement. That's usually the procedure. Now, they needed 60 votes to pass this, and it passed 63-36. One senator didn't vote, and you'll see who that is when I show you the totals. The bill, which implements this deal struck by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and President Biden to raise the debt ceiling and cut spending, passed 63-36. 4 Democrats, 31 Republicans, and 1 independent, Bernie Sanders of Vermont, voted no. Now, the reason why the Democrats voted no is not the same reason why the Republicans voted no. House lawmakers sent the bill to the Senate on Wednesday in a bipartisan 314-117 vote, after weeks of intense negotiations between McCarthy and Biden. I'm sure I'm even going to be generous enough to say there was some smart people in the White House that were negotiating this. I think this is a crappy deal. I think what happened was they both covered their asses to stop a default. A default would have been bad for a lot of reasons, and maybe long-term might have been good. I don't know. I'm not an economist. But I know McCarthy had him by the short hairs, and he let him go. It's a game of chicken. Is the White House going to cave to what the Republicans want? They should have asked for a lot more. They didn't. The Senate's inability to pass its own bill made it a bystander in those talks and gave senators no realistic option other than approving the deal. Yeah, that was done on purpose. It wastes 3, 4, 5 days. God forbid you might have to work. I'm going to make a comparison here. I like American history, especially Civil War through, we'll say, 1929. It's generally my time. Even with movies, I like that as a period piece. For a long, long time in the 1800s, the issue of slavery, the can was kicked down the road. Now, I've always said here, and I still believe it, that the American system of national government is the best system ever devised. It is set up for gridlock purposely to force you to come to a compromise on important issues like this one. So those of you that say, well, John, you always talk about how brilliant the American system is, and this is the American system working. They came to a bipartisan agreement, but not really. Technically, they did it. I'm going to compare the 1800s to this and the slavery issue, that the issue is slavery. Like this one is the national debt. That's today's slavery issue, important issue. In 1800s, the Missouri Compromise, and we can go through a whole list of things, kicked the can down the road. Kicked the can down from 1820, kicked the can down 1825, 1830, 1840, 1850, and then things started to escalate. John Brown, many Uncle Tom's Cabin. There were many things that transpired, ending with the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, and the secession of southern states that prompted the bloodiest conflict in American history. To give you an idea, if you plugged in today's population as a percent with the percent that died in the American Civil War, 6 million Americans would have died. Another 10 to 15 million wounded, permanently disfigured, arms and legs missing. You get the idea. It was a catastrophe. I think this is a catastrophe waiting to happen as well. This is where the brilliant system sometimes kind of tricks itself in a way. It was set up to be bipartisan and compromise, and that was done. But it kicked the can down the road. If you notice, this is only good for till January 2025, long after the presidential and congressional and Senate elections. A third of the Senate is up next fall. Presidency and all of Congress in 2024. It's a presidential year. And there's going to be a lot of changes. But they don't want to be blamed for anything. McCarthy doesn't want the Republicans to be blamed, and Biden doesn't want the Democrats to be blamed. So we'll put something together so we can walk and say, wait, we can tell our constituents on either side of the aisle that we won. It's kicking the can down the road. It's not making the very, very hard decisions on fiscal responsibility, which would hurt people short term, but in the long term would be absolutely wonderful. Same thing with slavery. They kicked out the can down the road until they couldn't anymore, and it exploded in their faces. And that's going to happen with this. Now, I'll be 67 this November. It won't affect me that much. But you younger people out there that are 30, 35, and younger, you're getting screwed. We're running up the credit card bill that you're going to have to pay. Welcome to compromise. You young people that are voting Democrat, what are you thinking? Now, let's take a look at the actual senators that vote in the roll call. As you can see here, I hate like heck to use it, but I'll trust the Washington Post to at least get the numbers right. Maybe not the editorial, because they suck. The Senate voted Thursday night to raise the limit of how much money the federal government can borrow to pay its bills. Actually, they didn't put a cap on it at all for 2 years. The measure, which passed 63-36 vote after receiving bipartisan support from the House Wednesday, was sent to President Biden. And there you'll see 44 Democrats, 17 GOPs, 2 independents, and those are, I forget who they are. One no independent was Bernie Sanders. I know Christian Sinema, and I believe is an independent from either Alaska or Maine, I forget. Both Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell urged senators to pass the bill. I'm going to use the spooky with those two mental pygmies. I mean, they're poster people for what's wrong with our government. Time is a luxury the Senate does not have. You want to prevent default, Schumer said during floor remarks. Biden must sign the legislation before Monday, the day the government would default on its debt without an extended borrowing cap, which that's an argument for a later date. While several senators pressed for amendment votes Thursday night, none sought to derail the legislation. Well, in a way, a couple of the amendments would have changed the legislation dramatically. None of the amendments passed. Let me say that again. I think it was 12 or so. None passed. This budget is a bipartisan compromise. Technically true. Neither side got everything it wanted. Technically true. But it's what they call that, the lie of omission. McCarthy had the White House by the balls, and he let him slip through his fingers, literally in this case, he used the metaphor, because the Republicans wanted to save their behind because they were getting blamed in the media, cable news, which is controlled mostly by Democrats, and they didn't want to take the hit. So let's take a look here. You'll see supports, opposes, and did not vote. Only one senator, Bill Hagerty of Tennessee. Why he did not vote, I don't know. I live in upstate New York. I'm considering moving to Tennessee. Why Hagerty did, unless he was deathly ill, or there was a tragedy in his family. If I ever moved to Tennessee, I certainly wouldn't vote for him. And you see supports on the left, you'll see blue and red, and then there's a yellow as the independents. And I'll slowly scroll down. As you can see, most of the no's are red. Now, John Fetterman there, you see in blue, voted no. Not for the same reasons the Republicans voted no. He says it took away too much. It took away nothing. Susan Collins of Maine, she also voted for it. Lindsey Graham voted against. I'm hot and cold on Lindsey Graham, mostly cold. Josh Hawley, who I like a lot. And you'll see I'll slowly scroll through the list if you want to stop the video to get a better look. Christian Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer, my two senators, sadly, I say that with no joy. Dianne Feinstein, I don't know who voted for her. I guess they wheeled her in the chair and had her put her hand up in the air. How pitiful is that? It's senior abuse. Chuck Grassley voted for it. I'm a little surprised, but the old school Republicans. They think that if you play by the rules and have a good debate and put your opinions on for public consumption, that the people will make the right choice. Those days are over. Those days are over with manipulation of social media and cable news. I'll scroll through some more. I give Marco Rubio credit, even though I think he's a wuss sometimes. He voted no. Rick Scott from Florida voted no. It's good to see this, I'm back and forth on Rick Scott as well. Amy Klobuchar, who at one time, many years ago, was actually a decent Democrat, is now worthless. Joe Manchin. Would it have mattered? I think what happened was they went through all the senators, and they tried to get to 60. So they allowed some Democrats to vote no, because the Republicans told them this is how many good yeses they're going to be. So it was a foregone conclusion. If they didn't have the votes, believe me, Elizabeth Warren here voting no. Fetterman, all the rest would have voted yes. Bernie Sanders, Lisa Murkowski, who I can't figure her out. And you see all the yeses. Patty Murray, of course. And I'll scroll through them. You can stop the video if you want to check out the list a little closer. Mark Warner, things that make you sigh. Todd Young of Indiana. And there it is. There is the actual roll call by individual senator. Now, this is the long and the short of it. Now, this paragraph right here says a lot. Let's read it. The bipartisan deal suspends the debt limit with no cap. No cap. That's important through January 1, 2025. That means that's past the presidential election, that's past the congressional elections, and a third of the Senate elections. So there's no way they can come back and get bit in the behind. Through January 2025, cuts non-defense spending to near fiscal 2022 levels. These levels should be pre-COVID, which technically I believe is 2019 fiscal year. Period. Not 1 cent more than it was spent in total in the fiscal year for 2019. That's the end of the story, but that's not what happened. Cap spending increases at 1% the following year and sets non-mandatory caps for the 4 years thereafter, which they can change. It also claws back some money aimed at the Internal Revenue Service and some unspent COVID-19 pandemic funds. You had to argue over money they didn't spend? That's how effed up this whole thing is. It's incredibly incredible. Defense spending would rise about 3%, and they said it's below the inflation rate, so they won't be ready, so Republicans wanted to do it. To my House colleague, I can't believe you did this, and Senator Lindsey Graham, the guy's such a grifter. I can't tell which side to be on with him. To the Speaker, I know you've got a tough job. I like you, but the party of Ronald Reagan is dying. If you were around in Senate when Ronald Reagan was president, you would be an outcast. Unbelievable. I know Rand Paul is furious. Graham and others threatened to hold up the bill until assurances were given that defense spending would not be limited by the deal. Of course, you have to believe Chuck Schumer and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell offered those assurances. How? They're not God. It's unbelievable to me. It really and truly is. Mitch McConnell would rather have his party in the minority in the Senate and be minority leader than be majority leader. It's amazing to me. If you remember, his wife used to work for Trump. She was a cabinet member who 2 weeks before the end of Trump's term resigned because of January 6th, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Provoke war in Russia, and there's a picture of Lindsey Graham. The Senate spent several hours working out an agreement and quickly considered the bill. No, they just did what the White House and the House put together, looked it over real quick and initialed it. Just like the House vote, defectors from both sides were expected. No, they got just exactly what they needed. They gave, if each party could vote yes or no, depending on their constituencies in their state, and they finagled it so it'd be just enough for it to pass 63, and they needed 60. It would have looked really bad at 60, so they gave themselves a little bit of cushion. One provision in the final deal requires a 1% across spending cut if Congress can't pass the 12 annual appropriation bills, something it has not done regularly for years. Ooh, 1%. We're going to say that you have a monthly budget of $5,000. For a middle-class family, that's about right. I mean, your income is $5,000. So let's take a look at what 1%. You sit down with your family and say, you know what, guys? We're having some tough economic times. So we're going to have to cut back. I'm making a 1% cut for our budgets in this household. I know it's going to hurt. It's $50 a month. Oh, my God, that's too much. $1, was it come out $1.25 a day? Something like that, $1.50 a day? Big effing deal. It's a joke. As lawmakers are debating the various amendments, Senate leaders sent out a statement calling on Appropriations Chair Pat Murray and Ranking Republican Susan Collins to begin the process of copying together the 12 bills, blah, 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 blah. And we'll read the last part of it is, the leaders look forward to bills being reported out of committee with strong bipartisan support, they added. The leaders will seek and facilitate floor consideration of these bills with the cooperation of senators of both parties. One big, happy, dysfunctional family. What a crock of... It's really that simple. I would say, in my state, don't vote for the two senators that voted for it. Well, both the senators are way left libtards, so I wouldn't vote for them anyway. So guys like me, people like me that are in deep, deep blue states, we're pretty much screwed. Anyway, folks, there it is. Read it and weep. Until next time, goodbye, and definitely good luck. We're going to need it.